I never listened to a podcast in my life, and the first ever podcast I listened to, he said on it, stop caring what other people think. And as soon as I heard that sentence, I rang my dad and I was like, I need to go to talk to someone. And he was like, we've known that for a while, but there's no point in me or us pushing you because you wouldn't have done it. So then dad opened up about his mental health struggles when he was working. There was an accident at work and stuff, and he fell into, because I remember seeing him now that he was quite gaunt when we were kind of growing up at one stage, and he was really struggling. But I was put on.
That's class from your dad, by the way, because not many people of that generation are able to do that.
Yeah, and I would have, but you know, you put your parents, people can put their parents up as like, particularly dads anyway, like Superman. I was like, if he, and this is what the logic in my head, the thought process at the time was like, if he can do it, well then I can do it. If it's okay for me to do it, well then I'm going to do it. So I went to the GP and said, right, I need to go, and this is how I'm feeling. She was like, here's some antidepressants. I was like, I don't really want to take them. She's like, well, here's some antidepressants. I was like, you're not listening to me, but I'll take them anyway. So I started taking them.
What were they?
I can't remember what they were. Like, I tried to block that bit out. So like, this piece of thing over here is red. That would look great to me when I went on them. I sounded drunk all the time, and I just felt weak, felt like literally had no energy.
From what I've heard, that most people describe it as like numb.
I was numb. I literally could. And I've known people personally who have gone on them since, and they felt the same. They don't get me wrong; they do work for people, but that wasn't what I needed. I've
been talking about this quite a lot because I've had quite a few instances where clients have went to GPs and stuff, and I'm like, you just don't have time to, or you don't have time or any solution to give to these people, and the only thing you have is medication, and that I find hard to deal with. But at the same time, you want to not slag it off because there's people that it will save their life at the same time. It's like really hard to talk about.
Yeah, and that GP is no longer a GP.
You're one.
Yeah. And that's not a dig at her. She was doing her job at that time, but I always struggled to go back to her because of it. I was like, because I used to go to her dad. Her dad was my GP initially, and she was the daughter. She took over the surgery, but I always struggled. Whatever advice she gave me after that, I just felt hurt by it because he put so much faith and trust.
It's almost like you're broken and you need this. You need a pill to fix it. Do you know what I mean? That's what it sort of feels like when it's like not like why.
Yeah. And then, in fairness, she kind of said, like, there's a name we can go to go and talk to. So I went to talk to Sharon. I'd never done therapy in my life. Went to Sharon. Sharon just happened to be that she was, she used to compete as a bodybuilder, but she was very no nonsense. And I think that's probably where I get my no nonsense approach from now. Like, my dad's very no nonsense, and my mom will be quite cutting at times, and in a nice way. And then she was very cutting. And I went to her.
And what was she?
She was a therapist.
And within the medical system?
No, like, she was private.
Okay, how did you find her?
GP kind of said there's this place you can go to, Connolly Counselling, in Dublin, which is probably about 15 minutes from my house.
So that's paid for?
I had to pay for it privately.
Okay, because it's very hard to get people. A lot of people ask me now, like, how did you find your therapist? And he was my old podcast producer. So the guy would sit there and produce my change the camera, and I used to do therapy in the studio. So I used to speak to him all the time, and I was his podcast client. And then I was like a wee too close for you to do therapy, and he was like, just not close, like like if we kept on doing it, he was like, I can still take you on as a therapist client. So I fell into it.
Okay.
Like, as in I just met him randomly, whereas I would not. I remember I tried to get therapy the year before, and I just Googled people, and the only ones that I could find that I like sort of related to, never heard from them.
Yeah, it's a lot of trust to put in, because the big thing that people feel is a fear of judgment, and that was my big thing. Because when having gone through the whole process with Sharon, I did it probably for the first 3 months once a week, so it was full on, and then you'd had homework afterwards, and then the second 3 months was kind of like every 2 weeks, and I was still doing the homeworks and stuff. And then after about 6 months, I kind of just felt like genuinely a weight had lifted off my shoulder. Just felt like content. I knew there was stuff still to be worked on, and there always is, but I felt a lot more at ease having spoken about it with her and kind of navigated a few things. Like, don't get me wrong, there's still stuff that crops up about it. It was validation from other people, acceptance from other people. Like, I was severely bullied. My whole depression came from the need to be liked by other people because I was severely bullied as a kid in primary school.
What ages and what for?
Physical and emotional. So from the age of about 7 till probably about 14. And then I had severe acne in secondary school, and I just completely withdrew. Like, I went to that school that I went to play sports, and that was the reason I chose it. I didn't play a sport because I cared what other people think, because it was a massive like rugby school. And
you good at rugby?
I was meant to. It's a massive rugby
I
school.
could have been.
Could have been. What would have been? So I went to that school to play sports, and I kept getting called in by the head of the year, and it's like, you need to go and do something. I was like, I'm not doing it. And they're like, kept giving out. And I was like, I'm not doing it. So
did you have any friends?
I had 2 or 3 mates that were really, really close. One from the age of 4 that I went to secondary school with as well, and then the 2 lads as well. But they brought in other people in. So like, I have a group now of 18 from school that we'd be in a WhatsApp group. We'd have the Christmas dinner. We'd have everything together. So it's like, because of that branch out that I kept those 2 or 3, or had those 2 or 3, should I say, that it allowed me to kind of branch out to the other people who I may not have spoken to. Like, if I went in, I always used to get dropped into school really early. I would just sit in an empty classroom, and I would be a communal area. It would be like table tennis or whatever, or pool or whatever it may be in the school. And I would just go into the classroom and just kind of sit there on my own, waiting for the class to start. And even on yard, like, we played football at break, and that would be my release. But I wouldn't play sports as a social thing.
Were you depressed in school then, do you think?
I'd say so.
Yeah.
I'd say I've had situational depression. I'd say I've had traumatic grief, a lot of PTSD kind of stuff.
From that?
Yeah, like the bullying in primary school was probably the worst. Like, I remember getting my head shoved in. So we used to have these railings, and my head was pushed into one of those, and tried to push my head through the railing. Like, head pushed into grass, head pushed into like tarmac. Yeah, it wasn't nice, and it does defeat you. Like, I remember, like, I just didn't really talk to people, and then when it came to like talking to girls, like, my hairline, non-existent.